What's up, Black Comic Lords? Welcome to the show. You know, Bitterroot is just one of my favorite things to talk about. It is one of the best comic book series in the modern history. That's not hyperbole. That's not my opinion. Objectively speaking, by all measurable standards, it's one of the best series in modern history. I'm proud and I'm honored to be able to bring these upcoming guests to talk about that, what that means, what is the significance of this series, and what is the future. So, without any further ado, excuse me, I'm a little nervous. Let's bring on Mr. David Walker, Mr. Sanford Green, Professor John Jennings, and Dr. Ebony Toussaint. Thank you all for joining us. I am completely solo tonight, everyone. My producer, Derek, is not here, so I'm having to do all the tasks that he does and talk to you all at the same time. So bear with me. Everyone in the chat as well.
You can do it. You know you can do it.
You got this.
Let's say to everybody, what's up to everybody in the chat? AJ, Robert Monroe, Kevin Pitts, Mr. Green, Amir, what's up? How you doing? Pericles, Dragon Balls in the house. On time. Eclectic Blurred's niche with the great questions I'm sure are coming. And Marwan Williams, thank y'all for joining us. Let's get into the show. So here's the thing. We actually have been doing a number of these Bitterroot discussions. We left off at issue 3. Just to do a quick recap on this. What do we know now? We know so Mr. Sylvester's back. Dr. Sylvester's back. And he is on the side of the Sangeryes. We also learned that Agent Chase is not quite what he seems. He's in fact aligned with the Sangeryes as well. To what extent, we don't know yet in that issue. But we know that he was there to help Dr. Sylvester, help Joseph, much to the surprise of his partner, Agent Steele, who gets shot in the back by super uber racist redneck sheriff from Mississippi, Ketchicoon, Mississippi. Which brings us to issue number 4, which starts us back. I still can't say this word without chuckling. Ketchicoon, Mississippi. David,
yes,
you have a singular wit, sir.
I have my moments.
You have your moments.
I was trying to get the benefit of the doubt. That's the first time I heard it pronounced. Ketchicoon, really? I'm sorry.
Really, you didn't catch it before, John? You didn't?
No, I thought it was an African word or something. It was a ketchicoon. I'm like, seriously?
Let's go with that.
That's all right. That's all right.
Let's go with the whole notion that it's African.
No, let's not. Let's lean into the racism.
Let's lean into the racism.
Okay.
Okay, I'm shut up.
All right. Dr. Sylvester has gone through a lot. He has changed from being an adversary, an antagonist to the Sangerye families, to becoming an ally, and in fact, in essence, a member of the family. But he's ruminating how that journey began and how it came to be. But one of the main points of contention between him and the Sangeryes, and this is a running theme throughout the series, is how to deal with Janu. How do you deal with racism? How do you deal with the evil of racism? Their attack has been to use the fifth no to not to cure it, but to treat it. You know, it's kind of like a cancer. You can do treatments for it. You can't necessarily cure it. And that's a what? What'd you say?
I said it's more like a virus.
More like a virus, right. It's you just can't really get rid of it. You can treat it, and that's the point of contention he has with the Sangeryes. And they talk about this concept that you can't cure a soul that's been infected by hate. The infected soul has to cure itself. The best we can do is slow down the disease long enough to show them the way to true purification. What is true purification?
Or are you asking that?
Oh, yeah, I'm asking that.
Well, I can't tell you that. I'm still figuring it out. It's true purification is expelling all that hate from yourself, right? It's making that decision. I would almost liken it to if someone was an alcoholic, right? You can take somebody to an AA meeting. You can teach them the tenets of the 12-step program, but it's up to them to stop drinking. It's up to them to give up the alcoholism. And so that's sort of what true purification is like. It's up to the individual to let go of the hate that controls them. And there's so there is no curing it. It's you can give it like it's like putting a Band-Aid on a severed limb. It ain't gonna do much good.
That's what
Go ahead.
I was going to say that's what makes the series so unique, because we took on this big idea of hatred through the eyes of racism, which again, so many layers to that, and there's millions of stories to of course, using the Sangerye family as the conduit to tell these stories. Yeah, we can go for forever. So that question is kind of the reason why we asked that question at the beginning. Like, can we have like a solution to some degree? And I guess the solution is the fight, remaining in the fight, and the series allows us to show these different iterations of the fight through the eyes of the family.
I like what you said, David, about the concept that it's up to every individual to let go of that hate, because I think that's something we're going to circle back to.
Yeah.
What was also interesting was in this portrayal where they're having this discussion about how to fight this evil. There's the children in the back listening on. I always thought one of the interesting themes in this series is family. What is a family? And sort of the generational aspects of this concept, this series. And you realize in this one setup here, the Sangeryes. First of all, the word Sangerye, I think, David, you'd mentioned to some degree means blood, right?
Blood warrior, technically, yes.
And their family is actually not made up purely of blood. They have a lot of adopted family members.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that their family is not necessarily defined by blood. It's actually defined by love. It's by having ideology, the same values, mores to fight this particular type of evil, and they're bounded by blood. And you've got a whole, a multitude of different backgrounds. If you see these children, they represent the next generation. They represent the future, and some of them, they don't look alike. They're all very different. Tell us about that. Was that intentional? Is that a message you're trying to send there?
Yes, but I think it was also just sort of an evolution of where we had left off with the third volume. There were some characters that we introduced that were rescued. Cotton was one of them. He was a little kid at that point. There were some other kids that were rescued. This was in issues between issues 10 and 15. And so when the idea was to move forward, jump ahead like 30 years or so, it just made sense to bring them in. And then it was like, bring them in as adults. But then it was like, okay, well, did anyone have kids? We left off, there was, Berg, Ford, Cullen, and Blink. So there was those four members. And it was like, well, at least one of them should have had kids of their own. Cullen has these kids that he adopted. and Cotton being one of the kids that was adopted, and so yeah, I was just sort of playing around with like how does family evolve, and it's not just, you don't have to be born into a family to be part of a family, and sometimes even when you're born into one, you don't feel like you're a member, right? You're made to feel alienated or unwanted, and so I wanted to just play with that a little bit and really like put the Sangeryes through, like put them through their paces, so to speak, in that if they talk about being family, let's show what the next stage of family looks like.
Yeah. William Henryhan makes this comment. He says the family approach to treating versus killing reflects their own family history. They've always addressed and overcome treating their eternal issues instead of cutting family members off, killing. I thought it was kind of an interesting analysis. What is your take on that?
Yeah, no, I mean that was and this comes through, I think, in some ways even more so in this particular arc, is that that just because they disagree doesn't mean they can't come to some semblance of peace within themselves, right? And allow other people to come around. And we saw that in the first 3 arcs. You know, you started with Ford thinking one way, Cullen thinking another way, and then they sort of did 180s, and but at the end they were all on the same side, and you know, it's when you, like, people can have these sort of ideological stances and not even realize that they're essentially the same stance, right? So some people see a glass as half empty, the other will see the glass as half full, but it's the exact same glass, right? It's and that's part of what I was trying to get across, what we're trying to get across with this particular arc.
Hey, John, what? Oh, go ahead.
Shout outs to William. He's a frat brother, and he's a big supporter of Bitterroot. So shout outs to him.
Yeah, John. What's your take on this?
I'm sorry. Again,
I know you've got a little one running around there.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you know, I put in the chat, but there's this term fictive kin that pops in my head, right? Where it's like, we're not talking about actual bonds, you know, biological bonds, or you know, but we're talking about like constructed narratives around why you interact with people, you know, and even with those that, you know, that cutting off and those different ways that you deal with family are connected to like narratives, right? Different types of narrative structures that hold a family together. And, you know, I definitely think that's a really interesting analog or an analysis that, yeah, the way that they've treated their family is also how they've gone about treating these different monstrous representations of racism and oppression. Yeah. So I agree with that. I think that's really interesting. So.
And Dr. Toussaint?
I agree with John. Being human, though, is just very messy. And also William Henryhan for pointing out the family dynamic and how it plays out with the Genu, the Fifnu, and the creatures. I think there's also the whole, going back to the beginning, the struggle of brain versus brawn, like who's fighting versus who's in the kitchen, who's in the house versus who's in the streets. Who's doing like the science versus the street work. But I think I agree with his very concise comparison of the family dynamic. And I think what Sanford said too, in terms of just the fight, like, is that like, how do we solve it? I know David kind of left it on a open, you know, for people to figure out like, well, how do we solve this thing, which is brilliant. That's why I said it's likened to a virus and not necessarily a cancer, because a cancer is very definitive, like you're likely going to die. Whereas a virus, we can give you antivirals and not cure you, but hopefully like lessen the severity of the signs and symptoms. So maybe less likelihood that you're going to die or suffer greatly. But I think that's a part of the human experience. Going back to that struggle and that fight is, do we fight? Do we cut people off? And we're seeing a lot, you know, especially with social media in this generation, is like, do we fight, and, you know, or do we just cut it off and move on?
Well, going back to the virus analogy, I mean, one of the things that is also a running theme in this particular series, is what happens when that virus mutates. What happens when the virus, gets more intelligent and wants to fight for its own survival? And that's what I think we have here with this concept with this governor of Mississippi, and how he's making active efforts to not only continue his white supremacy, but going after the critical response team set up by the federal government to try and fight the Jinnu. Going so far as to instruct the local sheriff, I want you to kill these federal agents and blame it on the niggers, so that they'll think it's done by the local Inzondo.
Critical race theory. DEI.
Yeah, look, that's what I'm talking. Thank you, Dr. Son. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is the subtext that David and Chuck write into this is meaningful for what we're going on even to this day. Why don't you talk about this, David?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what's the point, especially if you're dealing in horror or science fiction, what's the point if you're not trying to say something more than just trying to scare the reader, right? You want them to think. And I come back to, all of my favorite sci-fi horror stories are really metaphors for something else, right? I mean, my favorite horror movie of all time is Night of the Living Dead, which is not just one of the greatest horror movies of all time, it's hands down one of the greatest movies of all time. And it's one of the greatest movies about America, right? And what America's really like and what it really does to its citizens. But I also love Don Siegel's original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And that's not just about an invasion of body snatchers, right? So to me, the opportunity was, well, let's say something. And that's always been the opportunity that I've been looking for ever since we started working on Bitterroot several years back. And it just felt like there's even more urgency now. And it was like, well, how do we make sure that there's subtext and something going on here and not have it be the only thing going on? Like, because we got to entertain the readers first and foremost. Not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody gets that, what Invasion of the Body Snatchers was. Not everybody gets it. And I just remember years ago, I was really trying to break into comics. There was an editor who I pitched an idea to, and he said, "Hey, that's really great, but what's it about?" And I said, "Well, it's about a guy who, becomes a vigilante and da-da-da." And he was like, "Yeah, no, what's it about?" And he must have asked me that question like 4 or 5 times, and it took me years to figure out what he really meant, right? And as a writer, there's your story. The story of Bitterroot is a family of monster hunters, and the monsters are created through racism and oppression. But like, what are we really getting at? What is it really about? And that's I never know that right away. It starts to take shape as by the 3rd or 4th draft usually. But with Bitterroot, we always knew what it was about. So with this one, it was just like, let's just go for broke,
So you go a little further down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Because you create a literal rabbit hole. You talk about the evil garden. In the midst of the mutation of the Jinnu from the original series, the first volume, to this current iteration of Jinnu, which is far more monstrous. And then there's this talk, you talk about it here, but it doesn't really go any further. You talk about that it has a place that has very different names throughout many cultures. But in essence, it's an evil garden where evil is festered and grown and does not go away. Can you talk about what this concept is and what it may mean?
Oh, man. This is one of those things, like, I know what it means to me, but part of it is like, what does it mean to the individual readers, right? So I don't want to, it's like the people who argue, was Harrison Ford a replicant or not in Blade Runner, right? And like, I believe he was a replicant. But with this garden of of evil, it was just like, I mean, how do you not look at the history of this country, and especially in certain parts of this country, and it's like evil has festered in places, and it's grown unchecked. And when we first started working on this particular arc, and it was set in 1964, and I was doing a lot of research on Mississippi, but some other southern states too. But I was really drawn to 1964. I was drawn to the murder of Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner, and I was like looking at like how truly evil, like the people who were investigating their murders were also the people who did the murders, right? It was actually the police in Mississippi, the local police. And while they were looking for the bodies of these 3 civil rights workers, they're uncovering these other bodies, right? And it was the same thing that happened when they were looking for Emmett Till. When they were looking for him, they were finding other bodies. And it was like evil really does exist in this country. And there are places where it grows unchecked. It's like like an invasive species of weeds or something like that. And so to me, it was just like, yeah, let's just play around and make it like put a nice little sheen on it so people don't realize how obvious we're being. But that Garden of Evil thing, and it really kind of came out of an idea Chuck had at one point, and it was like, okay, let's take this one step further. And so what you see popping up out of the ground in issues 4 and 5 is evolution of that idea. What happened, like in the song Bitter Fruit, Strange Fruit, excuse me, blood on the root. What happens when all this blood is spilled and it seeps into the ground? What does it do to the ground? What does it do to the surrounding area? And I think that's what we're really trying to get at.
But even like bitter root, though, like it's like a popular like native like indigenous plant. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was very, very clever. And the species is Rita viva, and it means to revive like from a dry place. And so I think a lot of that is like evident throughout the stories, like progression, 3 volumes, and even this current run. So I don't know who did that, by the way, Bitter Root, but I thought that was very, very clever. So the family is, the species is Rita viva, but the family, I believe, like the genus is the Leucaena plant or whatever. And so I don't know. I just thought how the plants were throughout the story and how that was chosen as like the title was just epic. So to Paul's point of this being like actual factual, like just history making, like comic book series, like ever. I mean, just the title itself being Bitter Root was just very crucial. So brilliant, David.
You guys see why she's on our team now. So you gotta just
yes, I like biology and plants. Yes.
What do you do when you have ground that is so seeped in that evil and hatred? It's very, I guess the question becomes for me, when you look at the foundation of what this country was built on, and its history, could this analogy be more widespread than any one particular area? Is the whole country one that, given its history, you could argue is this evil garden? I mean, I guess that's kind of for every person to define themselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's and that's the thing. Even like with Ketchicoon County, Ketchicoon, Mississippi, like that name. If you look throughout the history of this country, there's different parts of this country that have like names that are that bad, right? Here, my friend went to college in Southern Oregon, at Southern Oregon State, and there's a area there called Dead Indian Road, right? Like up until the 90s, Dead Indian Road, right? And that this whole idea of the country as a whole having that blood seeped into the ground, that oppression. And that's what this country, let's be honest, that's what this country was built on, was enforced slavery or forced slavery and genocide. And if you can't make an interesting comic out of that, then he ain't trying hard enough.
We're gonna circle back to this point because there's a couple questions here by Eclectic Bird and Each that I thought would be on point for later discussion. We're gonna circle back to this. But one of the things Dr. Sylvester brings up is the fact that, look, the government, because at this point, this is 1954, so the government is come around to the Sangeryes, ask for their assistance, ask for their fifnu to help to treat the Jinnu. But they're not really involving the Sangerye. They're not giving them agency to help in this endeavor. So he kind of, says, they're trying to control the thing, but they're not really trying to really treat it. It's kind of like, we're going to give you some drugs towards it, but we're not going to actually try and fix the condition.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this, David, and how this led to the Sangerye's critical response team?
Yeah, and some of this is there's a couple reasons why there's such a big jump in time from the last volume to this one is it gives you the opportunity, or us as a creative team, an opportunity to paint ourselves into corners that are really difficult to get out of, but then we have to think our way out of them, right? And that's sort of what was happening with all 5 of these issues. And one of the things I wanted to get into was this idea of how history is written, and it's often written, it's not written by the winner. In fact, the history of this country, much of it was written by the losers. Edward J. Pollard literally rewrote the history of the American Civil War, and that's what's taught in most schools in this country, right? And so this idea of the lies that were taught and trying to mask over and say, oh, there's some good people in this group over here, right? They're running around with hoods on, but let's not misjudge them, right? And that's what I wanted to really sort of get into. And it's this idea that we're gonna do something really nice for you. We're gonna let you vote. We're gonna let you sit in the front of the bus. And while all of these were important milestones, there was other things that didn't change, but the people who didn't want these things to change will point to these other things and go, well, they Black folks got to sit at the lunch counter now. What more can we give them, right? I'm trying not to go totally angry Black man here, right? The heart.
I mean, you're doing pretty good. You're doing pretty good.
You can't speak your consciousness into existence and not get angry at some point. So don't worry about it.
That's what James Baldwin said, basically.
Right.
How are you not in a rage all the time? And I like to think that when I'm sleeping, I'm not angry. But everything else I do pretty angry. So.
Well, speaking of anger, Dr. Sylvester, in speaking to the Sangerye, brings up this concept of Operation Purify. A covert mission to investigate, treat, and contain what's being called the pestis ipsimus, Latin for the plague of the master. Even in naming their affliction, they have cast themselves in a role of superiority. Angry much, David?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Angry to me.
I thought it was great. I was like, yes, sorry, but in spite of
truth to power, go ahead and talk about it, John.
No, seriously. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. Yeah, and
yeah, you think?
All in that, I mean, even the fact that they're using Latin, even, is using this ancient language, this dead language, speaking directly to those issues around power, and we still use Latin to name things. I mean, Dr. Toussaint just did that, right? Because it's this imposition of a particular type of structure that I feel like we've always had to push back against. I was thinking a lot about the symbolism in the story. It's just like, it's so palpable to me, And I remember when David first told me about what the story was going to be, because as you all know, like, I love monsters, right? And I love metaphors of monsters, and the monstrous always has a meaning to it. They just pop out of the ground like daisies. The monsters that we create are communal. We don't just say, hey, I'm gonna make this monster. It's actually like interstitial, like, community create these creatures, and we create all the ways to kill them and all those kind of things, right? So this is like really, really great world building, but also like just some of the best like political commentary I've ever seen, and not just in comics, but I want to say in almost any medium, And as you stated earlier, Paul, I want to reiterate, like, this isn't just like, this is one of the best comic book series to ever exist. Period. Yeah. Full stop. And I say that, like you said, with no hyperbole. Nope. No. This is actually
period.
No, y'all, the three of you have created a landmark series, and it needs to be celebrated. And I'm glad that we're doing it. But everybody needs to read this, And I was honored to I actually, he didn't ask me to do the back matter. I asked them. I was like, can I please? Because I was like we're working in the same soil, so to speak, So yeah, I think that we need this type of, like, you say, speaking truth to power, and on our own terms. This is actually something in the vein of a Sinners. This is something in the vein of, something like as monumental as Brother Man or these other narratives that we've seen before. So thank you for that. I don't know if I actually answered your question, but I just wanted to, like, give flowers, and not roots, and not bitter roots, but flowers to my brothers for doing this. It's a lot of work.
Funny, and asked David to do the back matter. Sanford
I
asked him to do the back matter.
Wait, what did you say?
I said, you asked David to do the back matter, while Sanford told me I was doing it. I was like, oh, okay.
Damn, you know what I'm saying? Okay.
You gotta strike while the iron is I don't know if this is the right metaphor, while the iron is hot, but I think I appreciate John and Ebony for coming and being a part of this. I mean, honestly, the back matter, once David kind of gave us the scope of what he wanted to present as far as like the back matter, because I'm thinking in terms of, at least at the time, I was thinking in terms of what back matter I've seen, from different, comics and what have you, and it's illustrations, and that stuff is fine, but he had a vision for something a little more academic, and these guys, John and Ebony, they're perfect to fill in that space. And we, to John's point, it really did put us in a different sphere once we started to put those things together. You have this comic, but you have this commentary and these essays, and so it's definitely transcended.
Well, it's interesting, because I don't know if I've ever publicly talked about it this way, but when I was a kid growing up, most of my favorite comics were Marvel had a line of black and white magazines, right? They had Deadly Hands of Kung Fu, Savage Sword of Conan. They did a brief Doc Savage run. They had Planet of the Apes, and all of those magazines had these articles, usually in between the stories. There's usually two stories, two like 24-page stories, and then these articles. And like, I love that as a kid. And I didn't realize until very recently that the whole idea of doing back matter in Bitterroot was in a large way influenced by those magazines from the 70s, right? Where it was like, and sometimes most of those articles weren't that good, they were just kind of goofy filler things. but to me as a kid, it made me feel like I was learning something while I was having a good time reading these comics. And John posted Rampaging Hulk. That was another one, right? And there was a black and white Howard the Duck magazine too. Like Marvel really was on point with their magazines from the early 70s on into the early 80s, nearly a decade run of that. And again, it never really occurred to me till this very recently. Oh, it was that, and also the back matter and like say Bitch Planet by Kelly Sue DeConnick and Valentine Delando, which I loved what they were doing in that book. And I just felt like I wanted to make sure we had a comic that could engage people on multiple levels, right? And I love process work in the back of a book, but that's almost like the easy route at this point. Like, let's really give them something interesting. So
I love how Sanford also does this angle from the side and does this zoom, and it's very cinematic. There's a lot of different ways he could have played this, and I love for the context of what he's talking about, how he set this up.
He does a good job every now and then.
You can see the quiet rage behind his eyes. And
right, exactly.
Baldwin quote, and you could like feel it. Like even in this, you can see their superiority.
That's storytelling. That's storytelling.
Good job.
I'm finally getting the hang of it. Looks like.
Stop. Top artist in the world being humble. That's funny. All right. So, Agent Chase, got a question for you.
Yes.
We knew that he was aligned with the Sangeryes. I think in our last discussion, we were trying to figure out, is he passing? I don't know.
You've been ahead of it every step of the way. You've been the one person. Everything you've said, I've been like, yo, he's figured it out. Like I wanted some people to be surprised,
I read a lot of comics. But he manifests into this.
Yeah.
But I can't quite figure out, is he a Jinnu or isn't he an Nkandu in this moment?
Well, do you want me to spoil it for you and all the readers right now?
No. If it's a spoiler, then no. But that's a question I still have. I don't know which side of this he's from. So it's still undefined at this moment. I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something, because I've read this a few times and I still wasn't able to figure it out.
Have you read issue 5?
I have.
Okay.
This is the key word I would use here. If there's one word that I would use to sum up this entire run, it would be evolution.
Yeah.
And so this character in particular truly represents evolution. Now, what that means, I'm not going to go any further.
All right. Just throw it out there.
That's a great choice of description to that.
This much of the series is about evolution.
Yes.
Even the Jinnu now has been made even more menacing and monstrous, to the point that Sanford depicted them as this monstrosity, which I try not to pay too much attention to, or else I will not be able to sleep at night.
You know what's funny? I'm sorry, man. I didn't think it was that horrifying.
I was like, come on, man. You can make this scary.
I can make it worse? No, I'm with Paul. I need to sleep well at night. I mean, there's something that David said earlier about, how the blood is spilled through hatred, and how it's, in the earth, and it festers over time, and it, to that point, it creates this bitter, these vines of that go deep like roots. And I started thinking about all the title and some of the exploration in that issue 4, and I was just trying to think of something that kind of helps to bring home the ugliness of what we're speaking of, the monster, but in the terms of this, you know, it's in the soil, it's in the roots, it grows and festers into this monstrosity, you know, and yeah, I thought I was being somewhat mild with it because I didn't want to go too. I had thoughts of other stuff, and I was like, no, I can't go that far. That even freaks me out. So
Look, I live in Florida. There's a lot of swamps down here. If you ever been in a swamp at night, the idea that these vines that are in the swamp can come to life and manifest itself into this big green thing with teeth and eyes stabbing you is something. Maybe I spend too much time out at night.
No, look, I was thinking of, I'm not going to lie, somebody in the comment said this has a very Lovecraftian look, and I wish John was on right now because he could talk about that a little bit. But yeah, there was this, to me, whenever somebody says anything as it relates to H.P. Lovecraft or Lovecraftian, like my only interest in being Lovecraftian is stealing from him and turning it into, because the dude was a horrific racist, for people who don't know that. And it's like, I want to take his, and so that was, I don't think I even said it in the script, but that was sort of what I was thinking, like, okay, we're going to show something that is the embodiment of racism. It should look like, something that would come out of H.P. Lovecraft, or also, and this is crucial, is John Carpenter's The Thing, his remake of The Thing, which came out, I want to say, in 82 or 83. And the thing I love about that movie, everything, I love everything about that movie, but it was this idea that there was this monstrous thing that could be made up of all these different living entities, and it was alive in and of itself, right? And it was always fighting to survive. It was always fighting to stay alive. And there's that great scene when Kurt Russell is sort of figuring out, like, well, if we do this test where we introduce hot metal into the bloodstream, maybe it will reveal itself. And then you like, there's just so much of that stuff. This particular arc really gave me an opportunity to tap into like some of my biggest influences in terms of horror and sci-fi, and yeah.
Yes.
All right.
I was going to say right here.
Go ahead.
Never mind. I mean, because we just mentioned the Thing and such, and Lovecraftian horror, right? So I feel like something like this story, and Lovecraft Country, the Battle of the Black Tom by Victor LaValle, have helped create like a new genre that I've dubbed the Afro-weird, that actually like fuses Afro-surrealism with cosmic horror. And so I've been actually working through positing different like tropes and stuff that actually like deal with this type of work, because I think that you guys have created a new genre, or at least a new subgenre, particularly when you're looking at like the subversion of H.P. Lovecraft's work, but also mixing it with like Afro-surrealism, Afrofuturism, and retrofuturism. Like you actually have created something that's, I think, as expansive as Lovecraft Country, but in comics form. That's my feel. So to me, it deserves a new way to talk about it, actually. And so to me, the Afro-weird is fusing weird fiction, cosmic fiction with these, very, very powerful political Afrocentric notions.
Bro, did you just make up that term off the top of your head, Afro-weird?
Not right now, but I've actually talked about, I already have a definition. Like I said, I'm a scholar, man. I'm trying to posit. So okay, let me back up. So
this brother just sit off the top of his dome, making up.
I don't know, even though I have done that before.
I'm sorry, David started laughing first, and I was thinking it, and you said it. I'm like, literally, are you throwing Afro and ethno in front of stuff?
No, I was like,
Afro-weird. That's like a new thing.
It is.
Every conversation I have with John, for as long as we've been friends, which is more than 10 years, there's always something I'm usually writing down. What did he just say? And I'll say something, and John will be, there's a word for that, or there's a term for that. And it's like, and now he's got Afro-weird, and I like
Yeah,
that. So,
I was just about to say we may want to go ahead and put it on record that that's where that term started, was right here.
Right here.
So
I mean, but you could do
That John, that entire quote you just gave,
it.
that entire thing you just said, that
Someone's
needs to
gonna
be
run
on the
with that.
jacket of the trade paperback. You guys need to
Okay.
take that quote.
Surrealism,
that, yeah.
Gothic, anything else
Well,
we
no-
should be writing down.
I was gonna say. So thank you for all of that. I really appreciate it. I did present this really quickly as a notion at Comic-Con last year. At the comic. So I have been thinking about this for a while. But what I want to do is I'm eternally grateful because not only did they create this new space, but you actually have given scholars like myself a laboratory. Those 2 to 4 pages, have given like scholars across, like some of the top scholars, by the way, in this in genre studies and pop culture studies have graced the pages of those back matter, and you've given us a space to actually like work through our ideas, Yeah, you've given us a space to actually like work through ideas, and you have young scholars like Will. This is their first time being published in a space like this. It's and people have gotten like tenure, based off of some of this stuff that you guys have let them do seriously, because this is you're creating a new space. So I'm very thankful for that. But I'm gonna shut up, okay?
No, you can't shut up because this is your section.
Well, yeah. I was going to say we may want to. I guess we're working out some things here in real time. We may want to do some kind of publication where we bring in all of these scholars from the past, collect them, and then possibly do something new, especially with those who receive tenure. Like I think it's kind of nice to know that our concept is being used in that way, and it's allowing not only young minds and impressionable minds to do to explore, but it's giving them a space to not only you can get tenure from this. That's pretty amazing to be able to have this to give them that type of opportunity.
I was going to add right quick, because you just reminded me, Sanford. There is a gentleman, and I know I told you about this. I wanted to actually feature his cover, but the University of Mississippi, ironically, is the top press for comic studies, right?
Okay.
University of Mississippi is a top press, for comic studies. There's a gentleman named Daniel Stein who wrote a book called "Strange Fruit and Bitter Roots," right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and actually, what he did was he analyzed through different lenses that myself and others have created. Like, he did his work, and this gym is from Germany, right? And this book is coming out, I think, it's coming out like next year, I think. But he did an overview of like books like this, like Farmhand, Blue Hand Mojo, Box of Bones, and he looked at this as a new space, and as far as like how Afro-American comic book creators deal with trauma and actually utilize comics to deal with sociological and oppressive trauma. And it's coming out. This is an entire book, and it's really well written, by the way.
Wow.
This is one of the reasons why I really encourage people, in addition to pre-ordering and buying the series as it's going on, when it's collected in the omnibus form, highly recommend the omnibus.
It's beautiful.
Because what I love that you did with the omnibus is you included all these bitter truths collectively. You collected them all together. And when you read it in that fashion, and you're seeing all of these essays of people of note discussing this series and ramifications of it, the consequences of it, the context of it, it takes on an entirely different form, and you look at it in a completely different light. And you also recognize the importance of this work.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope when you guys collect this one that you do the same thing.
Oh yeah. There's been some people who've said, well, why do you do that? Why do you put the essays and everything in the trades? And I was like, because they're as crucial to the comic as the covers are, and as the variant covers are. Bitter Root doesn't exist without Bitter Truths. It doesn't exist as it is right now, and so to me it's crucial. And one of the things I wanted to speak to, and this is John's touching upon it, and Dr. Toussaint's touching upon it, but it's you know, I feel like as creatives we have a responsibility, right? And that part of that responsibility is to not be number one responsibility is to be entertaining. Number two responsibility is to not necessarily be safe or complacent in what we do. And running almost in a tie with that is make sure you're saying something important, right? Even you don't have to come out and say exactly what it is, but let it be important. And I think that what's really interesting is over the last, we'll say like 5 to 10 years, I see it in film a lot and TV. I see this content, whether it's like a show like Atlanta or a movie like Sinners, where I'm watching this stuff and I'm like, yo, this is the sort of stuff I want to be doing, right? And then I forget that in comics, I am part of that movement, right? But we're like, I think that right now, again, the last 5-10 years has been some of the most exciting in terms of what Black creators and Black content is doing. And now it's even more crucial because they're trying to silence us. They're trying to ban our books. They're trying to keep us quiet. And it's like, you know, I'm not gonna go out like that. You know, what I'm trying to think of how that Cypress Hill song goes. We ain't going out like that.
Well, that's the one. Can I say this only because I got maybe 5 minutes left, guys. I'm sorry. To David's point, we all touched on what this book means in terms of to the audience. But I'll go a step further and say I'm going to pull the wool back here just a second. Monthly comics is very much a battle of attrition. Like, you cannot do monthly comics, create our own. I would go even further and say that is literally a labor of love. In a world, in a time right now where absolute Batman and absolute whatever and ultimate whatever, we're in the middle of all of that, trying to navigate this creator-owned, this Afro-weird title, and we were able to win awards that a lot of these, they're striving to do, but we're able to penetrate through enough to do that. And it's all thanks to you guys, to the audience, the fans that support us. It goes without saying, just even in some of the comments tonight, that you guys absolutely love what we're doing is the reason why we're doing it. We David can tell you, we can be doing an absolute title right now. We can be doing, an ultimate Marvel thing or whatever. But we see the importance of this because we know that there's so many things under attack. And it's funny because honestly, Bitterroot kind of derived from the early stages of all of this stuff that the things that we're experiencing right now in this country, this world. That inspired us to come together and create this thing. So again, thank you, fans, for all of the support and the love that you guys have shown. And we wouldn't be here without you. I know that's cliche, but that's probably more true in this sense than anything, because all the things I said earlier. So thanks again.
Yeah, no, I got just to back up what Sanford said. There was a good gap of time between the volume 3 and this is what's essentially volume 4, and people came back, right? Not every comic gets an opportunity to come back and still find its audience, and so I'm very appreciative of the patience that everybody's had. It's like, okay, I hope it was worth the wait, and the response that we've gotten has lets me know that I think it was, and you know, and it's nice to know, like, again, like looking through the comments and all these, everything that people are saying, and AO Radio hit the nail on the head when he says you have the essence of stand-up comic, you mix the truth with the medicine, right? And it's like, I mean, my hero is one of my heroes is Richard Pryor, right? The funniest, most unfunny comedian of all time. Because when you really listen to his work, it's just plain tragic, you know. And but he takes the most tragic things and mines them for humor, mines them for comedy, and that's sort of what we're trying to do. It's like you can be both. You can be both things. You can be, you know, poignant and entertaining. That's
edutainment, in the words of KRS.
Edutainment. And I'll say this too, guys. You know, Bitterroot, yes, this is the conclusion of this arc, but it's just the conclusion of this arc. So there you go.
Bitterroot will return. Cool.
And now that Sanford's getting ready to jump off, we can talk a lot of smack about it.
There you go. No, you don't.
This is my favorite part. Let's go. Let's get it.
Sanford, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate you, bro.
All right, y'all be good.
All right, so we're going to now jump into
number
issue
5. Is it?
Issue number 5. The finale. The solicit for the cover A originally was hidden, and then ultimately it was revealed that it was Agent Chase on the cover.
Which I still fought with. I'm still angry about that, right? I never wanted him to be in the uniform because I felt like it gave away, it was always going to give away too much. But oh well, it looks good. I can't say. I have to admit it looks good.
It does look snazzy. Very Challengers of the Unknown.
I know. I love that. Yeah, I was trying to put the costumes are so mod. Oh my god, yes. I loved it.
Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit in a sec too.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm gonna shut up.
Star Trek.
No, it's good. It's good. Here's the other variant covers. I am fascinated with Torrin Clark's art.
Isn't it amazing?
It's amazing. The fact that his entire career is based on doing cover art, but from his perspective, what he says is that he tells entire stories based on what's in the cover, and it's 100% true.
Yes,
because you have these ancestors in the past you see in the background. You've got generationally, you've got a vision of one of the Sangeryes from back in the original run of Bitterroot, and then you've got the more modern Sangeryes now. 3 generations fighting this same fight. It's a beautiful piece. Beautiful piece.
Yeah, no, man. I'm trying to get him to do a cover for a little project that I'm doing, and he's booked up so solid. But I love his work, you know. And it's when Sanford showed me this one, both of these, you know, I'm always like, man, do we need to do? Like, why do we keep doing all these variants, right? It's because to me, it's taking money away from the readers, right? They got to buy more than one copy. But then when they show up, I'm like, look at this. You know, the Maria Wolf's cover for number 4 was, and Mike Allred's were like, just me. But there's something about this, about Torrin Clark's that really captures this in a way that, like, it can't be denied, right? So,
speaking of covers, Sanford did these cover A's, which ended up forming, in essence, a connecting cover. I'm sorry he left, because I was going to ask him, or maybe if David, if you know, this image he forwarded us at the bottom here with all of the connecting covers together in one image. Is this going to be released at some point? This particular cover?
It's a great question. It's not the cover of the trade paperback, which is coming this fall. That's got a completely different cover. So we gave prints of this away at San Diego Comic-Con. So we'll end up doing something with it because, like, you know, I always liken some of the stuff that we do. It's like hip hop. You cut it, you remix it, you got your single version, but then you got the 12-inch, super dance remix and all that sort of stuff. So we'll see this again, I'm sure.
Shout out to the Rafe. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. It says to help spread the word and promote this series, you should reach out and send copies of the comic and merch to the In Godfrey We Trust podcast. Godfrey is all about promoting Black-owned business.
All right. Well, we will make a note of that for sure.
That's good to know.
While we're on that point, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying this series, if you're enjoying the content the Black Comic Lords are putting out, hit like the button. Take a second, just hit the like button. Help us out. If you're not subscribed to the channel, there's no reason for you not to be. It's free. Please subscribe to the channel so you know when we do these shows in the future. And also, if you really want to give us a hookup, share this video as we're doing it right now. I don't care what social media platform you're presently on, but go ahead and continue to share this video because it helps the algorithm catch us so we can ride the wave to success in the future. Appreciate it. All right, so let's jump into issue number 5. Speaking of the Garden of Evil, we start off in Washington, D.C., 1964, where a president of some unknown name, we don't know which president this is. Technically, in 64, it's probably LBJ. I don't know, but we do know that the literal Civil Rights Act is on his desk, assumably, I don't know, waiting for his signature. I don't know. But the Civil Rights Act is on his desk, right next to a book called The American Dream. And I can't make out what that is right above Civil Rights Act. Does that say LB? Is that the letters LBJ? I don't know. CRT? I don't know.
I think it's FBI. I think. I don't know.
FBI?
I'm not sure though. This was Sanford going total freeform improv on us. So
I don't know what that says actually, but
So the Sangeryes have been brought before the president. He's like, why is it that you ended up violating your mandate? Why there's several dozen casualties? And as they're thinking about their response to him, they're also noting in this flashback to Ketchikan, Mississippi, the fact that these things are evolving. We talked about the evolution. We talked about the mutations. It says we're fighting an enemy that many people refuse to admit even exists. Not only does it still exist, it's involved, but every effort has been made to say that the disease that creates the monsters we hunt has been cured. And that is a lie, Mr. President. Because it's evolved into this, which can't be. God, this is monstrous. I don't care what. And to think that Sanford actually said, "Well, I could have made it much worse than this."
I wish he had.
Like the Blob kind of.
Yeah, I want to bring like full. Let's go full Lovecraft.
I mean, right down to the horror on the people's faces.
I know they're like, "Oh my god."
Well, here's the thing, right? I believe, and some people would argue with me, but they'd be wrong. I see comics, and they're horror comics, but they're not scary. They don't really scare me. Or I see comedy that doesn't make me laugh. And so one of the things I was really trying to emphasize with Sanford was like, let's make this thing look terrifying. Let's like, and again, I go back to John Carpenter's The Thing, because there's the that first time they go into the kennel where the dogs are, and the thing is absorbing all the dogs, and everybody's like, whoa, and like, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, you get a little later in the movie and they're doing CPR, and the dude's hands get bitten off and the thing comes out, and like, that's how do you get that in a comic? It's very difficult to get that with static images, but it can be done, and I knew that Sanford could do it. So and more importantly, I wanted, when people saw these monsters, because there's 2 of them in this issue, I wanted them to go, what is that? Like really not being sure what they're looking at.
I'm fairly certain that when I was 6, I had a nightmare about this particular monster, which is why I find this particularly disjarring, I should say.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, am I muted? I'm sorry.
No, you're here, man. We hear you.
Because this is one of my favorite things. You know, I love monsters, right? So I just did my monster lecture, right? And so this actually is the idea that the monster is in a constant state of becoming, right? Because believe me, which is wild because sorry, this is my kid. There's monster theory, right? There's actually a monster studies center in Santa Clara, University of Santa Clara, which I just found out about. So this idea that the ultimate monster is one that actually has multiple forms, like it actually does, it starts to mutate. It has all these different like orifices and protuberances, and it's leaking. Like the blob is the ultimate monster. It doesn't even have a head. It's just like a big nasty thing, and it's almost like the more hyperbolic and crazy the monster is, the more terrifying it is because the less human it is, right? And also because it doesn't really have a form, you could then like project a lot of different metaphors onto it, So so this is like one of the most effective ways to actually create the grotesque and the monstrous. All right, I'm done. I'm out. That's it.
All right. So, the conversation shifted from we're no longer talking about how can we fight this thing, how can we treat this thing. We certainly can't cure it, and it's getting worse. Our only option is to kill it, and they have avoided the K word. They have avoided trying to unalive these things. I think, David, in our very first episode, you had discussed when someone asked you, well, why didn't you just kill it? And your response was, well, understand what the Jinnu are. They're mutated white folk. And when you kill these things, they revert back to their human form. And then you've got a dead white folk killed by some black people. That's not a good look for us especially back in, it's not good look for us now. It certainly wasn't a good look back at the time period of when these things were taking place. What do you think is the cause for this shift in mentality?
I think, well, I know what the cause for the shift is because I wrote this, and it was this. It's one thing to sort of intellectualize why we're not going to kill this thing, but it's another thing to face this monster, and this is a monster that they've never seen before, that no one in the family has ever seen before. But as this issue progresses, and we talk a little bit about it in issue 4, Dr. Sylvester's talking about there's another wave coming. There's the next evolution is coming, and they're all trying to be dismissive of it, but now it's here, right? And it's going to kill everybody, and that's the thing. There's careful because there's spoilers ahead, right? But what we're seeing with this new form of Jinnu is it doesn't care who it kills. It will kill anyone that gets in its way, because that's what hate eventually does, right? And that's what this part of what the story is really about, is where that hate becomes so intense that the monster is killing its own. It's feeding off of its own. And that's right. And that was where and Mariah recognizes that. They all recognize that in the moment. They've been the difference between her and anyone else who's still like, well, we got to try to fight it, is like, this fight right now, we're not going to win. Right here in downtown Ketchicoon, Mississippi, we're not winning this fight unless we kill this thing. And that was what I wanted to try to get across. And then as the story moves forward, of course, there's going to be ramifications for that.
There are ramifications because the president's giving him a dress down, and he's having this discussion with them. He's like, you went and you killed Jinnu. You killed good God-fearing white Americans in the South. And she's like, well, Mr. President, what would you have us do? You gave us a mandate to fight these things, and I wish to do so by any means necessary. And then he brings up the fact that, look, In doing so, you killed 50 people. Those numbers are unacceptable. And so, Mariah says something interesting to him. She basically says, if we had not killed those 50 people, many more than that would have died. But the implication is it would have been many more Black people that would have died, right? I mean, that's kind of the implication that I was getting. And he's like, yeah, that's unacceptable. Like this is literally a white lives matter argument, right? Like your 100, 200 Black lives do not equate to you killing 50 of these good white faring American citizens. That's kind of the implication this president's giving. And when they say, hey, the story that you're telling people about what the Jinnu is, just it's not jiving with reality. It's like, well, we're gonna make it jive with reality. This is the story you're going to tell. I want you to talk about this scene because I think it's got some levels to it.
It does, but Dr. Toussaint's got this deep contemplative look.
She does.
I want to hear what Dr. Toussaint.
I feel like she's almost biting her tongue. Yes, please.
Doesn't it look like that? It's like
it does. You're muted. You're muted.
The by any means necessary. We all know, the context for the quote and the decision. And there's, of course, my brain goes to health sciences and biomedical sciences and how we're always rationalizing. And now we have to argue about health equity and whose lives matter more and having to justify doing studies on like sickle cell research. And it's just like everything we're fighting just right now. So it just all feels very fresh. So if I'm boiling at the brim with rage, this is why, because it just feels like we're having these conversations right now, trying to justify everything that we're doing step by step, piece by piece, and having to explain. And it's like, well, you weren't there. Like, did you see the thing? Like, so this is the choice, is that we have to now kill. We have to do these things. And so justifying when, where, how, and why we do things. Sorry, it just also feels very fresh right now and related to the science work that I'm doing. But David, as always, I appreciate your brilliance and the layers here because it's so relatable. That's why I said being human is messy. So throughout this whole entire series is woven beautifully together. The writing is beautiful. The art is beautiful. But at the end, at the root of everything is being human is messy. And we got to go through all these, the nuance. And we've lost track of some of the, you know what I mean? Like the nuance and being able to have these discussions. But at the end of the day, the last thing she said at the bottom of that little corner was, by any means necessary. And then it's like, then we carry on the conversation. It's like, but don't miss what she said. Like, we still going to do what we got to do to save as many people as possible, despite, whatever, you think. I don't know if y'all be cussing on here, so I'm trying to keep it cute.
We passed our 10-minute non-cuss mark, so you're good.
And of course, her saying by any means necessary, and it's 1964. This is a nod to Malcolm X, and if nothing else, first off, let me dispel this myth, this popularized myth that the X-Men, that Professor X and Magneto were based on Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. That wasn't true. Like that there's no truth to that at all.
Amen.
And I'm so tired of it. I'm so tired of hearing that. But I did take, as we're putting this story arc together, I did take that ideological split that was really starting to ramp up in 64, right? This is Malcolm X hasn't been killed yet. The Black Panther Party hasn't been formed yet. Stokely Carmichael, before he changed his name to Kwame Ture, he coins the term Black Power right around all of this time, right? And that's part of what's going on behind the scenes in the story. Is like it's this moment where, the moment Mariah says by any means necessary, it lets you know, for some readers, it lets you know where she was when she made that decision in the town, right?
Yeah.
And it was like if we'll see what happens when the shit hits the fan later, because the shit has hit the fan now. I have to save people's lives. And that's where they're all at, That's where they're all at. They're seeing, for the last 15, 20 years, this lie is being told, oh, that disease that affected white people, it's cured. It doesn't exist anymore. But Black people still have their disease, and that's sort of what we're playing with, is this idea that this audacity of white people to believe that they don't have the problem. The problem isn't really theirs. It's our problem.
Yeah, and it was interesting because at this moment she's confronting the president, who's still going on with his lies about the status of what's going on with the Jinnu. She knows, they all know that he's lying. Yeah. They know the government's lying. They know the president's lying to them in their face. And she's like, what would you have me do? They're about to kill an entire county. And so I did what I had to do, which is save as many people's lives as possible by any means necessary. I mean, this is her realizing the government is complicit in what's going on. And I think it's a poignant, her making this quote speaks volumes, because it's you can't, Malcolm's alive in 64.
Yes, exactly. Right? He was.
So she's quoting him directly, and she's taking on that same sort of mentality of, look, this is where the line's drawn. And I'm not, you're lying to me, and I'm not going to step over this line. I'm working for the government. We're agreeing in the Sangeryes to work with the government on this issue, but this is a line I'm not going to cross. So I thought that was a real poignant moment.
And we've seen what happens when we've had to work within the government versus working outside the government as well. And I do a lot of health equity research. And so all of that began outside of the government, in community. And so we're seeing a big return now in the health equity space to community. And I think me and David, we spoke about this, about what ends up happening in the next 5 years past 64, but really from I think 63 to 68. The people we lost. I think I mentioned somebody talked about those 5 men that we lost, and we'll never know exactly what we lost in those span of those few years between Martin, Malcolm, Medgar, Bobby, JFK. Like in that short span of years, I was at an event last fall and it hit me, and I was like, whoa, we've talked about these people, at different points and different contexts and different historical classes, but what we lost in that period, and we're about to see that play out. Well, I can't predict the future, but just in terms of Bitterroot, but we're at 64. And so just thinking about the years ahead, what we're about to lose, and how we don't know how the next 50 years would have been different had Martin, Malcolm, Medgar, Bobby, JFK, had they survived that period. It's crazy to think about.
Right. So we talked about the mutation. David, you just mentioned this thing is mutated to the point where it's now going after white people. It doesn't discriminate.
Yeah.
The hate gets to the point, the evil gets to the point where it doesn't discriminate against black, white, whatever. It just it fuels itself. I love this page. This page I brought in purely for myself.
Yeah, this was like, oh my God! I saw this. I was like, "This is tight." It was.
So this is what I was saying. We're going to circle back to your statements, John, about the genres that this series covers, where you're talking, Lovecraftian, and you're talking about horror, and you're talking about Southern Gothic, speculative fiction, Afrofuturism. One of the terms you also mentioned was retrofuturism, which I'm a big fan of, from the 40s, 50s, 60s, pulp science fiction. I've always loved that genre. Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers,
Dan Dare.
Exactly. And that's what we have. And the thing that kind of, there's two things that are always in that genre. Big bubble space helmets, and jetpacks. Both of which are in this page. Yes. And that's why I love this page, and I had to bring it up. Has nothing to do with our discussion. I just loved seeing this moment. I'm like in a completely different direction that I was not expecting, and I love this moment. So hats off to you guys.
Thank you. It was sort of last minute. This wasn't where the story was going, and the story wasn't working. The final issue wasn't working. And part of it was because Blink wasn't there. right? And a lot of credit has to go to Shelley Bond, our editor, because Shelley is I love her. She's a great editor, but she's also can be really mean, right? And she'll be like, "This is what I want to see," and one of the things. So I had gotten to this point with it's really started in issue 4, where I was like, "What are we not showing the readers that the reader wants to see, even if they don't know they want to see it?"
Freaking jetpacks, man! Freaking jetpacks.
What I was doing was I was looking through when we were talking about setting this particular volume in the 60s. Sanford and I had a lot of conversations, and the 2 or 3 things we talked about a lot. We talked about Jack Kirby's work, not just in the Fantastic Four, but also in Challengers of the Unknown, which he had done at DC before Fantastic Four. And then we were talking about Jim Steranko's work, especially the stuff he was doing that was related to S.H.I.E.L.D. I want to say it was Tales to Astonish, but I could be wrong, losing my nerd cred. And so I was sort of flipping through some of those things, and then there was this promo image that we had done for the return of Bitterroot that I believe is actually going to be the cover of the trade paperback. And there was like this kind of ship in the background that we hadn't shown yet. And I was like, well, there's that ship, and we haven't seen Blink yet. And yo, what if Blink shows up like with the cavalry, right? Like this is like in any other book we would have seen that. We hadn't shown anything quite like that in Bitterroot up to this point, and I felt like, oh, this is what we're missing. This is what not just what we've missed out doing. The audience, we haven't given this to them. We haven't given like, let's show what this team is really about. Because right now, all we've seen is a handful of members in this small town, and we don't really understand what the critical response team is capable of or what they're all about. Let's show it in a double-page spread with with Blink leading them. You know,
when you think about the works of what's his name, Paul Anderson, Thunderbolts Are Go, Flash Gordon, as I said, Buck Rogers, those pulpy retro science fictions of that period, which I loved. I adored that stuff.
Me too.
But the singular thing is, we weren't in it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We weren't in it. And I had to remind
That's
myself,
why I love this page.
Yes. I had to remind myself that all that beautiful Steranko stuff and even the Jack Kirby stuff that I love so much, for the most part, Black people are never part of it. So we've never seen ourselves this way. And I lost sight of part of what this series is about, is giving Black people, not just Black people, let's be honest, right? It's giving an audience that is kind enough to give us their time to read the book. We're giving it to anyone who wants it. And I think that, you know, I talk about Sinners a fair amount. Sinners did the exact same thing. Sinners gave an audience, a large audience, stuff they didn't even know they wanted, right? And there's nothing better than giving an audience something they didn't know they want. And sometimes that thing looks a lot like something they've been given before.
Oh, you might want to start merching this out into some action figures. Pericles recommend.
Enoch's little monsters, little plushies.
Well, everyone can harass Sanford about that, because like I've been talking about trying to do this.
Sanford, he'll do what I tell him.
All right.
Wow. We're waiting on Sanford. I'm sorry.
No, I would love to see action figures, and I'd love to see more merchandise.
Yeah.
I think that's our next step. And so what I'll say also, because Paul, you were mentioning the uniforms that they were wearing. When we were doing the other volumes, the stuff that was set in the 20s, Sanford kept trying to put the family in uniforms. And I was like, you can't do that. It's not fitting with what we've already started. But in 1924, Black folks in some sort of superhero uniform just isn't going to work in the world as we're building it. But when we started talking about doing this new arc, and I was like, one of the first things I said was, you can give them uniforms. And then the problem became, he tried to put everybody in a uniform. And I was like, can't be in a uniform. You can't give away the secret right away.
Hilarious.
I might have to hit up Sanford for an original commission of these images because of how meaningful this is to me. To
I
see
want to
this.
draw some of these.
Huh?
I got to
You wanna
draw
what?
some of I said I have to draw some of this stuff. And I was thinking too, another thing that I thought, along with the along with the toys he's asked for his tablet. Sorry. Is an RPG, a role-playing game.
Yes, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Speaking of horrible images, it just keeps getting worse. The further you go into the book, the worse the monster becomes.
Yeah.
But seeing this imagery of them flying around with this freaking jetpacks, shooting this thing and fighting it, the horror on the people's faces, this is a great splash page.
Yeah.
This is a great splash page. But ultimately, as you mentioned, as I said earlier on, the reason they don't go about killing the Jinnu is because at the end of the day, they revert back to their human form. And that's what made this thing more monstrous, is that you realize it was an amalgamation of a bunch of Jinnu, a bunch of people, all into one monster. So when you kill the monster, all of these bodies are laid about. You know, all these white people are laid out that they have to deal with. He mentions Cotton says the Jinnu. How are we supposed to fight this new breed? And Dr. Sylvester says this way. Is he referring to killing them, or is there something else that he is referring to?
Man, I honestly can't remember what's on the next page after this. I think he's actually saying. I think he's saying that this is it. Like Dr. Sylvester. You know, and we hint at this in issue either 3 or 4. Dr. Sylvester's gone a little crazy, right? Because he's not aging, and he believes that he has been chosen by God. That he is like he's like, you know, whatever, the, you know, God's soldier in this battle. And to me, you know, I still haven't figured him out completely. But there's little things that we hint at. And there's things that we show, little bits and pieces, and you know, if we can get our act together and keep this story moving, you know, we're going to see more of it. We're going to see, like, he's going to go through more changes. Like I find Dr. Sylvester, like, he's still not totally a hero, right? He's down with these guys, but he's the one who's saying, "Yep, let's just kill them all. Let's just let God sort them out." You know, so. Yeah.
Was also a very poignant moment. And I said before that we were going to circle back to one of the statements you made, David. You said, ultimately, with this level of hatred, it can't be cured. You have to make a decision, right? You said something to that effect. I may be getting your quote wrong, but something to the effect, you have to make a decision to let go of this hate at some point.
Yeah.
Is that what this scene represents? Because you have this woman who was working at the church, which are obviously allies of the Sangerye family. Poignantly, Sanford being as brilliant as he is, there's a sign right behind her that literally says family and friends, if you notice that.
Yep.
Right?
That was the restaurant that we saw earlier. I think it was in issue 2 or 3.
The entrance to the little underground base that they had, and it's labeled family and friends. And in this image, you've got these 2 white people that were just fighting with the Sangeryes against the Jinnu, and this woman saying, "I need to learn how to fight these."
Yeah.
And it's like, I need to learn how to fight from a larger context. I need to learn how to fight hate, how to fight evil, how to fight racism. And then you've got Agent Steele looking at her, and he's kind of like, he's been through all this. I guess there's levels to this racism, because he's been this racist guy who's looked at even worse racist guys, was almost killed by a white supremacist guy, and then he fought this big monster, which was the ultimate of evil. So you see his journey. Can you talk about this for a sec?
Yeah, well, so in the original series, we had a character, Johnny Ray Knox, who was this white dude that Ford sort of like adopted as a pet almost, and has this tremendous impact on Ford. Ford sort of changes his ideology based on his experiences with Johnny Ray. And so I wanted to play with some of this sort of stuff in this new arc. And so with Steel was originally supposed to die, right? That was his fate. And then at some point it was like, oh, wait a sec, we have an opportunity to have him sort of be the embodiment of purging the hate from yourself, right? Because you notice during all this, he doesn't turn into a monster, right? So he isn't that far gone yet. Now, as far as the woman, Judy, she's like she was just really my response to a couple things. One was the character of Barbara in the original Night of the Living Dead, which in the original version, she's like she's crying the whole time, and she has no real agency, and she doesn't do much. She if anything, she's partially responsible for other people dying at the farmhouse, right? They did a remake of Night of the Living Dead, and they gave Barbara like some real, some backbone. Patricia Tallman played her and did a great job in that. And so I was like, with the character of Judy, I was really thinking about, when you look at the pictures of a lot of the volunteers, especially the Freedom Riders in the 60s, 63, 64, there's a lot of white people who went down south and put their lives on the line, and some of them died, right? Like Viola Luis is one of those people who died. And I was like, I want to show the evolution of that sort of well-meaning Northeastern liberal who comes from New York, or somewhere like that, who doesn't realize what she's getting into. That's what this character always was. She doesn't know what she's getting into, and I wanted to show her transformation. And then at some point I realized, oh, it's a great opportunity to show Steele's transformation. So you see two people sort of on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Steele doesn't care about black folks, and he's believing the lie. And Judy cares about the idea, but she doesn't necessarily realize how bad it is. And again, this story was built really around the deaths of Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner. That's where I was always thinking about those three men who were killed in '64 in Mississippi, and what Goodman and Schwerner, Cheney. It was horrific what happened to all three of them, but you had these two guys in their early 20s from New York who were like, we're doing good here. And like, yo, bro, just stay in New York. Don't come down here. There's that sort of thing I wanted to play with these, the juxtaposition between these two characters, and just trying to think about, where are they going to be in issues 6 through 12 or whatever. What's going to happen to them?
Ultimately, here's the end of the book.
Yeah.
The governor has a talk with, or the president is having a talk with this, I guess he's the governor, or the white supremacist representative.
The Mississippi governor, whose name I can't remember, but
yeah. And he's like, I've been trying to cover up for you guys, but stop BSing me. I mean, this is a bad situation. We're trying to do the best we can. He's like, look, and the Mississippi governor's like, this is all your fault. With your desegregation, you can't tell us how to live our lives. This is South. We do things different down here in the South. Can't desegregate this with try to give niggers, power and rights and all that foolishness. And he says, look, if you don't come to heel, there are going to be ramifications. He literally threatens him. Says there's going to be repercussions. And that's how this ends. I got to be honest with you, David. I was a little pissed when I got to this last page. We
You're
will
not the only one.
unleash hell on this nation, the likes of which most people could never imagine, and even more ain't gonna survive. I hope I'm making myself clear. The end. And it, like, end is in capital letters. Like, is that the end of the series? Like, are they not coming back? Like, is this? You kind of pissed me off with this, to be honest with you. Please tell me it's not the end.
I hope it's not the end. I really would like to do more. And, now it's a question of us working out our schedules and figuring it out. Sanford's not here, so he won't be able to defend himself from this horrible attack I'm about to launch at him. But like, I think that Sanford's career is in a really interesting place in terms of like the mainstream success he's having. And I don't want to take that away from him.
He's in Walmart.
Yeah, exactly. And you got to ride that wave while you can ride that wave, because it could go away at any point.
Those waves don't come often, so yeah,
they don't. But we've talked about it. We're trying to figure out like what all of our schedules can look like, and one of the problems of putting Bitterroot together is that we're the bosses, right? We don't actually have to answer to anybody other than each other, and we fight all the time, and it's one of the reasons why Shelley Bond is such a great editor, because she wrangles us in, right? We sometimes, 3 bosses is a lot of bosses, and so I tend to be like, Shelley, you deal with us. You're able to yell at us. She's the big sister or the auntie or whatever. But yeah, I would like to see, but I felt like this was the best place to end this arc at. And it was like, okay, if you want more, Paul, if you want more, if all the listeners want more, if all the fans out there want more, then like, make your voices known, right? Our sales were never terrible, but they're also not great. And it's like, how do we get, I can walk into most retailers in this country, the vast majority of them aren't carrying Bitterroot unless specific customers are pre-ordering it, right? Bitterroot isn't Saga. Bitterroot isn't that book that most retailers know. We better carry it because it's a perennial seller all the time. And it's like, well, let's get Bitterroot to that point where this is the book everybody wants it to be. Everybody wants to pick up. Everybody's in there. Oh, I heard about this Bitterroot thing, right? There were so many people that had great things to say when Sinners came out, and they were saying, hey, if you like Sinners, check out Bitterroot. Now, what I can tell you is, because I track the sales of our issues, all those people that were saying check out Bitterroot didn't necessarily, it didn't bump our numbers significantly, right? A lot of those people are waiting for the trade paperback to come. But if we're going to talk the business of comics, what we need is we need a bigger fan base to spread the gospel and to grow that fan base.
Do you think it would, doing it in a graphic novel form, might be more beneficial?
I was going to say, I know a gentleman that has an imprint with a major publishing company, that specifically.
I think I've heard of a company called Megascope.
Yeah. It's a wonderful company, actually, with a wonderful marketer and international distribution. Something to think about. The other thing I was going to say too, and I was going to say this privately, but you know what the heck? We're here now. Bitterroot is a communal phenomenon. I feel like it's a very important book. It's a very important cultural expression. And I'm like, well, if you look at something like Hellboy, for instance, right, which is again, Mike Mignola is a one man is one man doing all this work. But what he did is he started franchising out the work. Many hands make light work. Now, mind you, I'm doing it myself for some of my intellectual property. I do it all the time, and I collaborate with a lot of people. I think that it might be a discussion.
You do work, John?
Huh? Yeah. People are like, how do you do so much work? And I'm like, man, that's a beautiful cover. Who did that? Oh my God.
Anyway. Man, y'all been talking about forever.
Yeah, man. So here's the thing. So I think that the three of y'all should have, between fights, have a really serious discussion about farming out stories, artwork to people you trust. I mean, Mignola now has like what? He's one of the largest intellectual property built worlds. And if you look at like the documentary about him
Yeah,
drawing
outside of
monsters,
Marvel and DC, he's the biggest.
he's the biggest, exactly, and it's because of the fact that he started collaborating with other writers, artists as an art director. You know,
Yeah.
and I know that people sensitive about their ish, right? But you have control of it, right? So you know, it's something to think about. I'm definitely going to reiterate this to the team, but it's something that's been on my mind for a long time because you deserve to have that type of success, and we deserve to have more Bitterroot.
Yeah,
No,
you
I
guys
agree.
control the
100%.
IP.
What's that?
I said you guys control the IP. You can allow it to go further.
There's a couple moments like there's a lot of stuff that we haven't even put on the table yet, and that's what I keep saying to Sanford and Chuck is that there are other creators out there that we can work with. There's other writers. There's other artists. We just need to get our act together enough to do it, and recognize the fact that that there's avenues that we haven't fully explored yet, and I'd like
Such
to,
as the
such
movie.
Well, yeah, there is the movie. Everything that has been posted about the movie in the last 2-3 months is honestly just people taking old press releases and not checking the date on them.
Yeah.
There's literally no new news right now. Now there's no, it's all the same thing, right? Our option at Legendary has expired, and we opted not to re-up with Legendary. And there's parties out there that are interested, and we're just trying to find the best deal and figure stuff out. And we still want to make the movie, right? And I'd like to see more comics. I'd also like to see toys. I'd love to see action figures, things like that. I mean, I have a decent sized collection of action figures that are of Black characters, Funko Pops too, but they're all Luke Cage, Falcon, Black Lightning, things, got those characters, Cyborg. We need more. We need more of that. And I think that it's not just, first off, it's not just fans within our larger age group, but it's younger fans. Like our dreams deserve to be nourished and activated and let it grow. I want to see what the next generation of creators does, right? I'd like to see between what we've done with Bitterroot, what Rodney is doing with Philadelphia,
Mhm.
what we saw Brandon and Kari Randolph do with Excellence. Like I want to see more of that. And I see, some of these indie guys, Jason Reeves and TJ Sterling, and there's a lot of indie folks out there, but we're struggling just to be seen and to stay viable. And so many of us are having to go to Kickstarter, and that's great, but if you're buying all 10 Batman variants that come out for a single issue, if you're dropping $50 on a single issue of Batman so you can have all the variants and all the variants of an X-Men, your disposable income doesn't allow for us, right? And I'm like, give up one Batman cover and just buy one Bitterroot cover, right? It's your life will be okay, and so I start to get, big surprise that I get militant, right? But I see how the sausage gets made, and it ain't easy. It ain't easy making these comics. It ain't easy putting them out, and it's certainly not easy when when you're in a really fortunate position like we are with Bitterroot, where we have a publisher. But if our sales drop below a certain number, that publisher is going to be like, yeah, we don't want to mess with you anymore, right? And that's just the reality of it.
Well, the Bitterroot is to equate Bitterroot to a Batman or an X-Men. I think just it does it a disservice as to how important a series it is. And I think it will only grow in recognition of its importance over time.
Mhm.
Which is why I wanted to do this and been such a strong proponent of what you guys are working on. And another reason why I wanted John and Dr. Toussaint to come on here as well. The work that you guys added in these bitter truths at the ends of these issues and talking about stuff beyond comics, because Bitterroot is truly beyond comics. It's bigger than that. I'd like you all to talk about this. Dr. Toussaint, talk about your work on this.
Oh man, the back matter. Oh man, I feel like it's been a long time working on this back matter just for these 5 issues. I think it was Professor Jennings' idea to go with Mississippi, much to my pushing back and saying, well, what about South Carolina? And every chance I had, I would bring up South Carolina somehow. I'd be like, wait, all the hoodoo, come on, all the Gullah Geechee, same thing with Sinners right there in Mississippi. They're doing all this Gullah Geechee stuff on the Gulf Coast, but it's fine. I got both Gulf Coast and Gullah Geechee heritage. But I think so for the first one, it was really dope. So we did a lot of issues that were prominent during the civil rights movement that are now we're seeing all of it back again. So I think we got to talk to the first one, which you probably already talked about, Talamika Bryce, and her work doing reproductive justice, her being an artist, visual media, her documentary like Water, and just talk. I mean, the Dobbs decision came out of Mississippi, right? The crossroads of the South. So everything that happens everywhere else is tested in, first the theory is in Mississippi. Then we go on, I'm skipping to issue 3. I got to talk to Dr. Kimyana Burke. She's a nationally renowned education and policy expert, and what she's done in terms of looking at the science of reading, and just we got to talk about how graphic narratives and storytelling are also important for literacy K through 12, and how she's worked to implement the Mississippi model nationwide. So just increasing Mississippi literacy in children. I think she specifically focused on 4th grade, for example, to pull out an example. And just her work is just absolutely incredible. And we're seeing right now, science communication, that's my area, misinformation, disinformation, and the work that we have to do. We can't even have certain conversations because people don't read, or they don't even know how to read. Literacy is just, so we can't even get to media comprehension and things like that, or differentiating AI. And if people just can't even read, just on a fundamental level. And so then we get to issue 5. This is probably my favorite because I fought for this, almost fought John Jennings on this real bad to get David Banner.
The hyperbole, man. I'm just saying. But go ahead.
What? Excuse me?
We fought. Never mind. You know what? Go ahead. Just
almost. I feel like I had to push.
I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna let you
finish.
wanted
to do something completely different, some poems
No.
or I don't know. You
No. This is please. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm being rude. Please continue.
some spoken word poetry or something back then. I was like, no, we gonna get David Banner. So the backstory, how this came together, just shout out to Ashley Pugh and Brandy and Tamisha Harris and everybody for coming together. This was shot in Atlanta. Here, I'm in Atlanta right now at Just Add Honey, a Black-owned tea boutique, and it was just a beautiful sit down and experience, and everybody came together, and it was really nice closing out with David because he's a freedom fighter. He's from Mississippi. He got the tattoo on his back. If you haven't listened to the interview yet, but it's on a Rural Comics podcast on our YouTube channel, and it's a lot to take in, and there was a lot of it was fun writing this stuff and fun spending time with David. He's an interesting, versatile human for sure, but beyond entertainment, I think it was a lot him talking about his work and Heal the Hood and the things that he's trying to do or been doing in the community. Even Afrofuturism was something I wasn't familiar with his album, not gonna lie, the God Box. No, I know David from Mississippi, the album, and Get Down on the Floor Like a Pimp and Cadillacs on 22s. David, I didn't know the, God Box David and comics creating David. So it was really nice to sit down, talk about the Incredible Hulk of hip hop and why his name isn't David Banner, but we know him as David Banner. But I think the back matter this time, I can't speak for Shelley Bond, but I was just on a panel with her and she said we stepped it up for this run. So I'm going to take my kudos and take all my credit from John Jennings. Because there's a lot of research and love and interview sit downs and recordings. And maybe we'll release the clips later of all the rest besides David Banner. Which is a lot of writing up. And of course, Shelley Bond editing my words is just going down in history. I mean, it's Shelley Bond. So like David said, she'll pull out that pen, and she was just talking about using her pen. And I'm like, oh. So
yeah.
I mean, seriously, and thank you again for all you were the backbone of the back matter. You know what I'm saying? I mean, for real, because, and I needed help with it, but also I knew how important it was to make sure that all the T's were crossed, all the I's were dotted, you know, and I'm really grateful to your work, you know, and one of the things when I thought about, sorry, one of the things that I thought about was I knew that we were going to be dealing with a lot of trauma. I knew because, you know, just after talking to David about some of the story points and stuff, I wanted to make sure that Black joy was evident because Mississippi is not just a haunted, violent space. You know, Mississippi birthed like all these different artists and writers, you know, like Richard Wright. We wanted, you know, we celebrate people like, you know, James Earl Jones, you know, Arthur Jafa, you know, all these different people, you know, that are coming from the space. And David, you know, who I've known for like, I think over a decade now, you know, as a friend. These are when I think about Mississippi, these are the people that I want people to remember, that it's not just about the pain and the struggle. That's why I wrote the first piece, you know, the intro piece like that, because now because of these the space that we're in, you know, this administration has made everything is Mississippi, and because what you guys are kind of alluding to is that Mississippi has been the canary in the coal mine, so to speak, right? And so now, you know, we are in a space where those bitter roots that were placed in the heart of America have shown up again, you know, and so the stories like this are even more important. But we also need to think about joy. We also need to think about affirmation and aspiration, and the fact that beauty comes from this space too.
Yeah, no, John and I talked about this a lot even before when we were first getting this new arc going, and you know, he was like, well, I think everything should be, all the back matter should be related to Mississippi. And I was like, really? You know, and then he started talking about really wanting to reflect on positivity and joy, and like I couldn't disagree with that. I agreed with that 100%. But I also was like, okay, in some ways I felt like what I had wanted to call this arc was Mississippi Burning, right? I was taking that from the Alan Parker movie from the late 80s, which is about the murders of Goodman, Cheney, and Swarner. And internally there was a lot of conflict between the team, and so we ended up with the next movement. But in my mind, I was sort of casting Mississippi as a villain, and that began to change as we started working on it. But also it was a reflection of the back matter that Ebony and John were putting together. It was making me see things differently. And I was like, yo, if I can see things differently, because Mississippi is one of the states I've never been to, right? And it's also a state that I'm like, yeah, I don't need to go there. Why would I want to go? And now I'm like, okay, maybe, you know, maybe it wouldn't be that bad. Maybe something, because there's good to be found everywhere, right? We just have to look for it. And I think that's, I mean, that's part of what's very unique, I think, about what, for lack of a better term, what we might call the Black experience, is that for people who've been oppressed the way we've been oppressed and have been dehumanized the way we've been dehumanized, like, we're really good at finding the good in stuff, right? We're really good at taking trauma and horrors and turning it into something. That's also what Sinners was about. But it's a very universal concept, right? It's this is what Toni Morrison wrote about. This is what, you know, Maya Angelou wrote about, James Baldwin, like all the great writers and poets and musicians have talked about this sort of stuff. And so, you know, I was kind of embarrassed at one point, like, oh, when John was saying it's going to be all Mississippi in the back matter, I was like, why? Now I'm like, oh, I'm so glad we did this, right? It makes me feel good that we did it. And you never know, maybe the next time it'll be all South Carolina. You never know.
You never know. Y'all heard it here. But I'm with you. I agree. It changed my life writing and doing the back matter, because I guess that it was begrudgingly. It was like, John said we doing all Mississippi. But like you said, it's the one southern state I have not spent any amount of. I've driven through it several times. Like you said, why would I want to go there? But honestly, sitting down talking to Talamika, and she's like, I'm raising my kids here. This is fertile soil. I'm showing people that we can be here. And I'm like, okay, I'll see. Maybe I'll come visit. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. But it definitely, it's changed my life a lot, right, in this back matter.
No, I think some amazing people come from Mississippi personally.
Yeah, no, and I know that. That's the thing. But it was, sometimes you need that reminder, placed in a different context, presented in a different context. And that was, look, I've always been so proud of the back matter in Bitterroot. And in part because I've been very hands off with all of it. You know, it's been like, John, what do you got for us? And so to me, when I see it with every issue that we've done, the back matter, I mean, I see it before we go to press and all that sort of stuff, but for me, it's all 100% surprises. It's always, John will tell me, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you do it. I trust you. And then it shows up and I'm like, wow. So to me, it's like we have content. It's just a surprise to me every single time. I don't know how to describe it otherwise, but it's, you know, when I get the copies, you know, from Image and I open it up, the first thing I do is I go to the back and read the back, because I haven't seen it all put together like this. I've seen the PDFs of the actual pages, the colors and the lettering, but there's something so new and fresh to the back matter for me that I just love it, you know, and so much so that even as I think about other projects that I'm doing, you know, especially some of the stuff I'm self-publishing, it's like, okay, what's the back matter going to be like? What are we going to put in this? And I just did that with the death of Bobby Hart. Was like, okay, I gotta put something in there that not only contextualizes the story that I'm doing, but like hopefully informs people about stuff they didn't know.
I mean, and shout out to Sanford, because at a signing we had at our local comic shop, Scratch and Spin, he was like, no, you should be back here. I'm in line, like waiting, like holding my comic, like, okay, like, let me get, he's like, you should be back here. I'm like, what? No, like just sign my comic so I can go. But he's like, no, everybody. I was like, nobody's reading the back matter, Sanford. Shh. And he's like, yo, everybody. And the line's wrapped around the building, mind you. He's like, who reads the back matter? And like everybody's hand went up. And I was like, he's like, she did it right here. And I'm like, oh my God. And people are asking me to sign their comic book in the back. And I'm like,
West College.
You know, I got to see John's work at collections and the Collections in Black exhibit up in Pittsburgh earlier this year. Phenomenal work. I mean, the whole Collections in Black is amazing, but seeing John's work up there amongst these other great artists is truly something to behold. Well, John just told me that I guess you've got another exhibit coming up in Mississippi, your home state.
Yeah.
To highlight Ghost Light. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So basically, and this is a space I have to say I had never heard of before, but there's a city called Meridian, Mississippi, which is in the middle of Mississippi. They reached out to me. And so basically it's called the Max. And the Max is a lovely facility. It's beautiful from what I could see from the YouTube videos, but it's dedicated to highlighting what they say is like creative genius from Mississippi, right? And for some reason they reached out to me. And I was like, you know, and it was like so you walk to the space. Huh?
I know why they reached out to you. Anyway,
yeah, because they had a slot to fill with somebody anyway.
Yeah.
So we're talking about like you walk into the space and you have images of like Oprah Winfrey, you know, Morgan Freeman, Elvis Presley, Eudora Welty, Jim Henson, you know, Richard Wright, all these B.B. King, all these amazing people from the South. I mean, from Mississippi in particular. and they wanted me to put together. Thank you, Jackson. Thank you. Jackson's celebrating. So they wanted me to put together a show about world building. And so, you know, there's a lot of Mississippi influence in Ghostlight, actually, the book I did with Marvel. And the idea was to do a show about, like, well, how do you create a new story through world building from scratch, and how do you work with like a multi-billion-dollar company like Marvel, you know, that kind of thing. So it just got greenlit, and I have to do a site visit, but essentially they're paying me to come home because I haven't been to Mississippi in a long time. Meridian's about an hour away from where I grew up, you know, around Jackson, Florida, you know, Mississippi. And I get to share my experiences with students there because I have to do site visits. I have to actually go to schools and talk to students, and I'll see my family, and I'll actually get a chance to see my friends that live there. So I'm really, really excited about it, to be able to share the way that I think about world building and storytelling. And hopefully I'll inspire some people, and hopefully I'll ruffle some feathers too.
That's what's up. You might even convince me to make a trip to Mississippi, which is the one state in the union I always swore I'd never go to. Now you're giving me a reason to go. I want to take a couple questions before we head out. Shout out to Bammy Chaos. Appreciate the love in the super chat. Says, curious if any plans to create a story with Afro-Indigenous characters in the future that's extremely unexplored. A lot of dope Black Indigenous artists out there.
That's a great question, Bammy Chaos. And the answer to the short answer is yes, I'd like to do that. You know, again, this is what John was talking about, this idea of trying to expand the Bitterroot world and bring in some new creators and things like that would be great. And that's how we would do that. And we've hinted at some of that stuff. There's other families that we've seen in various points in the story. And we talk about, there's oftentimes someone will say, what we call this, you know, these folks over here call it that, right? And so there is this exploration, and that was why, like, when watching Sinners, when you got to that one scene, right, with the Indigenous folks when they show up, and I was like, yo, this is it. And I sent the folks at Proximity, because I know them, an email, and I said, if you ever decide to do a comic with these characters, let me take a stab at writing it. You know, the reality is if we could get our act together, and hopefully we will, there would be that expansion, and we'd see more families, we would see more cultures, and at some point it would be great if we were in that position to hire other writers and other artists to bring some of that, you know, it's like a potluck, as it were. Like
you already started bringing in some other families and other cultures in the original run,
yeah,
as well. So
there's no way some Choctaw in Mississippi. Come on,
yeah.
You said we have to see Sinners. Come on, we definitely can write that in. Yeah.
The word Mississippi is a indigenous word that means big water. Just so you know.
Okay. All right. Collective Blurting says, how would the Janu look in this 2025 Make America Great Again environment? Would they be even stronger with the political climate reinforcing and endorsing those bigoted ideals and hatred? And
let's go to the 80s first. See, I want to write the 80s next. We got to go 30 more years. Yeah, let's get to the 80s first. So we got the war on drugs, we got Reaganomics, we got HIV/AIDS. It's so much in the 80s to unpack and so much to fight there. This health equity, we got excess death. For the first time, the federal government is actually acknowledging that Black people are dying in excess amounts. So yeah, this is post. We don't even have clean air, clean water yet in this current run, but the 80s, we got all of that, and it's a lot of smoking everywhere too. So I just feel we got to get the 80s first, right, David?
No, I want to get through the 60s, and then the next jump would be 80s. It would be. I don't know if it would be 84. I think it might be like 82, 83, but it would be somewhere between 82 and 86, somewhere.
That's fine, as long as you have a couple flashbacks to the 70s. I need to see the blaxploitation era version of the Sangerye family. I'm serious.
and as much as I do want to show that eventually, but
I can't have the baddest mofo in comics not do a flashback to the 70s.
We can do a flashback, but you heard it here. Me and David agree on 82, 83. Okay, that's what we're gonna write next.
and it's crucial because just as we played with the Harlem Renaissance in the first 3 volumes, and as we move forward, music has a bit of a part in this particular these 5 issues. But moving forward, there'll be more of a role of music, specifically the type of music that was coming from Stax and Atlantic Records. A lot of the stuff that was released by Atlantic was recorded at Stax in Memphis, and it's the stuff that I love. That's my favorite music from that era. So I want to play with that. But then in the 80s gives us really the early days of hip hop, and it's the message. It's Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five and the message, and it's there's so many possibilities. So again,
David, let's get to work. Let's go ahead. Let's just go ahead and get to work. Kick Sanford and Chuck out the way.
Next question. And this is where okay, yeah.
I'm like, they take too much. I'm in Oregon right now. Like,
have a conversation about how to
ready to start the writer's workshop right now.
You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it's people love the series. People want to work on it.
It's because I've been thinking about it for a really long time. So
clearly,
the 80s.
I was about to say we can tell.
A lot of great things happened in the 80s. So.
There's a lot of exuberance that's happening over in the in your box over there, Dr. Toussaint. So yeah.
Would the Genu be damn near invincible now? I guess in the context of the world that we're living now, with the MAGA types, the pushback on DEI, woke culture, as they phrase it, etc. We live in pretty trash times. Would they be damn near invincible, you think, the Genu?
I want to say, I believe, look, so we have total control over what we do in Bitterroot. And ultimately, in that regard, it is a sort of a power fantasy story. So would they be damn near invincible? They don't have to be, as long as we choose to do that. I also feel like, the Genu exists, right? The Genu is trying to run this country right now, right? Mm. And so, are they damn near invincible? I don't know. You tell me. We what are we as a nation willing to do to defend the humanity of this nation, right? That's what's at stake. And so I think about this stuff all the time, because I think as we try to take Bitterroot closer to a present time, what would that look like? And part of me feels like the Genu in 2025, you wouldn't even, they've learned how to control it. You can't see it. You can't see them anymore. They're the invisible menace.
I think my fear in answering that question is that in 2025, the fifth no doesn't work anymore at all, not even to treat. Because for me, the fifth no kind of represents truth, right? It's a truth serum. It is what you're feeding them. All of the hatred, the hatred that you feel, the racism that you're experiencing and putting out there is based on a lack of truth, a lack of understanding, a lot of tolerance. And that's ultimately what's in the fifth no, at least from my interpretation of it. But we live in a society now where the truth is malleable. And what's worse, arguably, the truth doesn't matter anymore, right?
I think even the family working with the government, I feel like there could, there's so many ways to go, David.
Like, objectively speaking, you can show someone this is a criminal act, objectively, and have it be viewed as not. Based on
and I think, but I do think that the reality is that it's this is we're seeing just a lot of horrific realities, right? But but it's always been like this in this country, right? It's always been hiding from the truth, telling lies, trying to spin a different narrative, and we live in an era of misinformation and a 24-hour news cycle in which the news is only half truths or all lies. But like, I go back to the Lost Cause, written by Edward Pollard, that rewrote the history of the Civil War and slavery, and it was embraced by this country. And lies have always been embraced, right? And the truths are they can be elusive, and so it's difficult sometimes to remain optimistic and to remain hopeful. But like, you can be supremely angry and pissed off and still have hope, right? I mean, that's I believe that's what James Baldwin talked about all the time, right?
Yeah.
And I think that even, especially after Malcolm X went to Mecca, did his Hajj and came back, and like, he was still angry, but he was also hopeful, right? And that's the thing. That's what Bitterroot, I hope, can try to convey some of that balance between the two, but also like give people like let them know that it's okay to be angry, but it's also okay to be hopeful, right? That's what because to me, that's, especially when I was talking about Stax, the music that came out of Stax was like, there's a lot of anger in that music, but there's also a ton of hope, and that's what that's what we as collectively as a people, so many of us understand.
Yeah. What do you all hope will be the impact of Bitterroot on up and coming comic book writers, especially Black writers?
Well, I would like other creators to see that, while there's elements of the sort of superhero realm or genre, I should say, especially in this arc, like, we're not a superhero book, right? That's not the genre we fit comfortably into. And I see a lot of these creators out there, all they're really doing, to me, is like, they're doing their version of Batman, or they're doing their version of X-Men, they're doing their version of standard superhero stuff. And it's like, why don't you try doing something a little different and see what else is out there? There's a million stories to tell, right? And I'd like to see some comedies. I'd like to see some romance. I would like to see us trying to tell stories that, rather than imitating, there's a certain amount of imitation you can do. That's fine. I mean, I'm sitting on this show and I'm talking about the influence of John Carpenter movies, and I'm talking about the influence of George Romero, and it's okay to bring a lot of that to the table, but our work needs to be more than that, right? And if all we're doing is imitating, whatever, your standard Marvel DC stuff in comics, then how do you stand out from the crowd, right? Like if the monsters in Bitterroot were just regular monsters, were just vampires or werewolves or whatever, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because Bitterroot wouldn't stand out. And part of the reason Sinners stood out so much is because they weren't just vampires, right? The vampires were a metaphor for something else. And so it's not just enough to read comics or watch movies and go, yo, that's dope. Like really pick it apart and look at it. Look at why it works. I talk to people about, like, for me, the show Atlanta, like changed everything for me, right?
Yeah.
And also Better Call Saul changed everything for me, right? Because Better Call Saul was like, not only was it non-linear in its approach, but it was a prequel, which prequels are really hard to do. And as I'm watching it, that show is layered so well, and the characters are developed so well. Don't just look at something and go, wow, this is dope, and I want to do something like this. Look at like why it really works, right? Look at like what makes it, what resonates with it, what about it resonates with you. And so, I'm constantly telling people like, what's the last great graphic novel you read? And I'm telling people, oh, it's like The Art of Charlie Chan Hak Chai is the best graphic novel of the last 15, 20 years. And people are
It made me want to stop making comic books. God.
Yeah. And the 10th anniversary, I think, is this year, if I remember correctly. And like, it's like, if you haven't read The Art of Charlie Chan Hak Chai, but you want to make comics, if you haven't read that book, I would go so far as to say you don't deserve to make comics.
It makes me so angry that he's so talented.
That's me drawing the line in the sand. Like if you're not aspiring to do that, right? If you're not aspiring to, or just Saga. Look at Saga. I mean, that book is so dope. Or
Tim Fielder's Infinitum.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much great stuff out there.
Or Big Jim and the White Boy.
And the White Boy. Yes, I've heard of that book. It's a really good book, actually.
I've heard great things about it. The author, brilliant.
Yeah. He's also really pretty. He's devastatingly pretty as well.
Devastating.
I hear that author's a badass mofo.
Badass mofo, exactly. The other one is like Upgrade Soul,
Upgrade Soul, Ezra Clayton Daniels' book. That's up there with Art of Charlie Chan Hak Chai. And these are books, those are two books that were created by one person, right? And it's like, and I was talking to Kyle Baker about this. I saw Kyle Baker at San Diego Comic-Con. Look at the works of Kyle Baker. Look what he's done. It's like, this is like, there's so much stuff out there to be reading and to be examining. And I say this too, if your desire is just to be a comic book writer, you're making a big mistake, right? Because for one thing, this industry isn't really sustainable enough for most people to make a living off of it. But also, like, your goal should be to be a great storyteller, right? And so I can't tell you the last graphic novel comic I've read all the way through, but I can tell you the last like 3 or 4 books that I finished reading, right? Because I read books and I watch movies, I read fiction and nonfiction, and I study stuff, and when I read comics, but I don't just read comics, and that's the thing. So that's the advice I would give to if someone out there wants to be a creator, is take in as much stuff as you can take in, and then just make comics. Like, anybody who's listening to this, whether it's live or right now, you like, there's nothing stopping you from making a comic today, right now, as long as you have a pen and some paper, you can do it. And I think that a lot of people get confused because they'll look at something like Watchmen, 12 issues long, hundreds of pages long, and they think that's what I want to do. And it's like, no, you start out by doing like a short comic, a couple panels, whatever. So
there's a question here for Dr. Toussaint. Also, I think nations like Santee and Catawba are in the Low Country. Dr. Toussaint can correct me on that.
Yes, we have the Catawba Nation in South Carolina. I think they're the only recognized one, but I'm reluctant to give, credit to that and say that's what makes a indigenous nation legitimate. It's like acknowledgement from the government, because what the fuck ever. Sorry, excuse me, host. Because you don't tell us who gets to be here and who deserves to be here, and your fictitious made up borders and lines and shit. But Catawba is one of the only ones. But yeah, Santee. So your Low Country. So yeah. So I thought about them when I thought about the Choctaw, obviously. But I actually wanted to go back to David, because David is incredibly, extraordinarily brilliant. He's probably one of my favorite writers. And I don't know if he knows that too much. But his advice, your panel, I rushed to his panel at Comic-Con, one of his panels. It was Nonfiction Comics, the Future of History-Based Storytelling. And I love that when you gave advice, you talked about the importance of not only storytelling, but you spoke about historians, and that telling people learn history and study history, just how much Bitterroot changed people's understanding, like Red Summer, and people not understanding that some of these events actually happened. And I believe we have a historian present here who has asked a question that talked about like how the president in the comic book obviously would ask about 50 deaths. Oh, white people, that's too much. When we had Black towns wiped out, Seneca Village, we've had Black Wall Street, we've had it happen repeatedly, and it's just been okay. But some of the advice you gave, I'm trying to refine where I pinned it, because I was like, I have to make sure that I go back to this and figure out a way to be able to make these things happen. But some of the advice that you gave that I just wanted to share, and it actually did inspire me, like you said, to go write a very short comic very quickly to process some of my grief and trauma, because I'm an emergency trauma nurse on nights. And so I had a massive patient loss right before I boarded the plane to San Diego Comic-Con. And I sat down on my break, and I cannot draw, but I drew like 6 panels and like wrote out like just, it was a massive loss, and it hit me really hard. But one of the things you said, David, was become a historian. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out and remind people what of a brilliant writer you are, even though you're being very humble. So yeah.
Well, I appreciate that a lot. And I tell everybody now, especially like we're all historians, even if we don't recognize that fact, right? But it's time for every single one of us to step up and take our place in history, and to recognize that, like, if you talk about the 1963 March on Washington, and we all know that that's where Dr. King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech, which, by the way, the vast majority of people have never listened to the speech in its entirety, right? They only know the last few seconds of it. But when you look at that picture, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people gathered at the mall in Washington, D.C., and all of our history teaches us about is just Martin Luther King. It's not teaching us about any of the other people who were there, who any of the other speakers were. It's only now, very recently, that people have started to learn the role that Bayard Rustin played in that whole event. But when you look at the pictures of the March on Washington, or you look at the pictures from the Bloody Sunday at the Edmund Pettus Bridge, or anything related to the Civil Rights Movement, how many of the people in those pictures are identified, right? Because every single person made a choice to be there, and every single person in those pictures, even if we don't know who they are, they're somebody's child or somebody's parent or somebody's uncle or auntie or cousin, and they're all part of history, because that's what history really is, right? We tend to think of history as these big, giant moments, right? But it isn't. It's all these little tiny moments, right? And I happen to think that the way we're taught history in this country, the older I get, the more I realize how poorly it's taught, right? Because most of us don't recognize our individual roles in history. And I'm not saying it in an egocentric sort of way. I'm just talking about it like it's a fact. Like, we all do things that influence other people's lives. Our families have done it, our parents, our grandparents, and some people don't even know it. They don't even know what their own families have done. And like, we need to start working on turning that around. We need to start making so that what we think is mundane is actually really important, is really special. And I think about that a lot, because I think about how, like the story of my grandparents and the things they did for their community. And if I don't tell those stories get lost. You can go anywhere in this country where Black folks own their homes, and at some point they weren't allowed to own homes. Even in the northern parts of the United States, where there wasn't legalized segregation, every town and every city was segregated. There's always that family that was the first there, the first on the block. Their stories are worth telling.
I remember you said that during your panel too. Like, you said somebody was sharing a story about their family member, and you're like, "Oh, you should write that." They're like, "Oh, nobody want to read that," and you're like, "Well, why are you telling it?" And I was like, "Facts. I'm always talking about my grandma, and I'm always telling that story. Why am I telling it if nobody wants to hear it?"
He was talking about his dad was a drummer. He wasn't a studio musician, but he toured, and he toured with, like, I want to say it was like Earth, Wind and Fire and Smokey Robinson, and he played with all these people, and he was telling the story to a small group of people, And he was beaming with pride as he's telling the story about his dad. And I was like, "Oh man, you need to write that down." And he literally goes, "Oh, nobody wants to hear that." And I looked at him, I said, "Then why are you saying it?" You know, I didn't walk away. I'm sitting here enwrapped with this. And that's the thing. It's like, there's every, and this is what Big Jim and the White Boy is about, right? It's about the story won't tell itself, and every story is worth telling. And so that's, you know, that's part of my agenda moving forward.
Darth Seed Side says, to get more eyes on Bitterroot, do you think you could meet with Todd McFarlane to bring Bitterroot in the Spawn universe and maybe having a crossover with Spawn 77?
You know, there was actually conversation about that at one point, and I'll be 100% honest. I was like, all right, let's just see the paperwork that clarifies like what we own as in
the IP.
Edward and I, and I was like, okay, so when this is collected into a trade paperback, how's the money getting divvied up? I wouldn't be opposed to a Spawn Bitterroot crossover as long as I had in writing, you know, where the money's getting split, how it's coming, and all that sort of stuff, and making because there's been enough stories in the past where like I don't care about it enough to just have it for the glory of doing it, right? And I see a lot of people in the indie comics realm doing their little crossover things, and I'm like, yo, like, are you clear who owns what? Because at some point, like, one of y'all might get really successful and start making a ton of money, but did you create this thing together? Is it clearly defined who owns what? You know, that's why you don't see more, you know, Marvel DC crossovers. There's more coming up, right? And the main reason they're coming up has nothing to do with creativity. It's because both companies know those are going to sell a ton of units, and it's going to get people going back into the comic book stores. That's what they care about the most. But I guarantee you that Batman Deadpool crossover, like, they're very clear who's getting paid what. Right. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're not clear with me how I'm getting paid and it's in writing, I ain't doing nothing with nobody.
You should probably talk to Rodney Barnes because he did a deal with Image and Spawn.
Yeah, they need to do like Savage Dragon and Spawn and stuff like that.
Right. With Blackula, Savage Dragon, Spawn, all with the Philadelphia verse.
Mm-hmm.
So he'd be a good person to talk to about, you know, how he managed to navigate where the money goes on that deal.
Rodney's good at that. So he's the smartest, and he's tall, so everyone's scared of him.
Sexual Chocolate says, is that my guy John Jennings come back and save Schomburg? Man, truer words have not been said.
Like Randy Watson in Sexual Chocolate?
The Randy Watson of Sexual Chocolate.
Okay.
Wait,
what happened to Schomburg? What did somebody say Schomburg? What are we talking about?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't think I'm allowed to say anything.
Oh, God.
I think that there definitely should be a conversation about it because, you know, it is a very important event to our community, you know. So eventually I'm hoping that there will be a report maybe filed by blackcomiclords, but no pressure.
I tell you what, Randy, I've been talking about this for a minute. Randy, when we have a chance, let's me and you do a recap of this past Schomburg. You come on with me. We'll post up our pictures.
Oh, wasn't it like lumped into the 100th or something? Is that?
That's correct.
Oh, okay, I missed it. Sorry.
So did I. I missed
it. It was bad though.
You didn't miss much.
And see, you know, besides this guy, that's my other kid. You know, so it's
your loss of your child, or
there's well, you know what it is. I didn't go this year. I haven't been in a while. There's this great John Cusack movie called Grosse Pointe Blank, where he goes home and his home has been turned into like a 7-Eleven, and he's like, they literally tore down his house and built the 7-Eleven or whatever. And everything I've heard about what happened this year, I would have been like, oh, you turned my house into a 7-Eleven, you know.
Yeah, that's a great movie, by the way. I love that. Yeah.
I said, don't be scared. Y'all are going off in these comments. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. See, this is a whole nother. Stop it.
That's a whole other show.
I'm not gonna get
Randy and I will do a show and we'll talk about Schomburg.
You could tell people are comfortable. You made like a familial environment because it feels like we at the house about to play cards and pull out some drinks or something, you know.
That's us every week. I mean, the best part is after the camera stopped rolling and we still backstage and
yes, we pull out the drinks.
To that end, thank you all for being on. David, John, Dr. Toussaint, appreciate being here. Stanford, thank you. Jackson, nice to finally see you in real life, Jackson. I've heard plenty of stories about you. You're famous, by the way. You are famous.
Jackson Kirby. Yeah.
Everybody knows Jackson. Dr. Toussaint, these other guys are veterans. You're new to the channel. We have a tradition at blackcomiclords that when you come on with us, you're family. So to that end, I'm going to put you on the screen. Whoops, not like that. Not like that either. Wow, I'm terrible at this. Okay. There we go. I want you to look into the camera, say your name, and say, I am a Black Comic Lord.
I am Dr. Ebony Toussaint, and I am a Black Comic Lord.
There you go. Welcome to the squad.
Thank you, gang. All right. What I gotta do? You gotta jump. No, I'm fine. Is it John Jennings?
Did you say who? What the heck?
We don't jump people in anymore because we got the whole lawsuit.
People say Lackey just violent. I heard.
But if you need, I can call the goons. I got a cousin that's just like Berg. Okay, we call him Bruce.
I got goons. You don't think I got goons?
You don't got no goons.
We got John Jennings. All right, everybody in the chat, thank you for your time. Listen, before you go, hit the like button. Hit the like. Just take a second right now. Hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel and share this video. Share it so that other people can. Because look, I'm dead ass when I'm with this. Bitterroot is important.
Yeah, it is.
It goes beyond comics. I mean, this is to our culture. That's the importance of this, and more people need to know about it, and more people need to share this. Share what's been told, what's been worked on, what's been done, and its importance. If we don't, we can't expect anyone else to do it for us. So it's incumbent on each and every one of us. Tell a friend, tell a hater, I don't care. Just let people know how important this book is and try and get as many people to read this because it's important work. So until next time, thank you all, Black Comic Lords. We got you.